January is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. We perhaps picture an older person who might be a little forgetful, does not recognize people, but this is a disease that the average person has to learn so much more about. Shari Remus is the Community Relations with Alzheimer's Society of Alberta and Northwest Territories. Welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you, Hal. I'm great to be here.
So January is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. You want this to be Alzheimer's Awareness Year, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What do you want our viewers to know about Alzheimer's?
Well, one of the biggest barriers to living a quality of life, Hal, with diagnosis of dementia is stigma. I don't know anything about living with dementia, and I'm not a caregiver for somebody with dementia. So what we've done is we've introduced 8 ambassadors from across Canada who are telling their stories. Who better to tell us what it's like to live with a diagnosis of dementia and the stigma of it than those people who are living with it right now. This month, the campaign is called I Live with Dementia, Let Me Help You Understand. www.ILIVEWITHDEMENTIA.CA is where you can find all the stories that these people are sharing.
How common is dementia in our province here in Alberta?
Well, actually, in Alberta, it's about 25,000 people currently have a diagnosis. In Canada, it's about 564,000 people.
And it's not just seniors either.
Oh, no. The thing is dementia is not a disease of old people. What it is a disease of the brain. And unfortunately, it does start to show itself in people over 65.
What about people who've suffered a concussion?
Well, there is some research that's being done on that with the sports figures that are coming out and saying, you know,
a lot of football players,
football players, hockey players.
Right.
There's not enough research that's been done yet and no statistics yet, but they are still doing research on that.
Shari, what are some of the symptoms of those who have Alzheimer's?
Well, actually, there are 10 warning signs that we have, and we actually have a pamphlet that I've brought in, Hal, that has the 10 warning signs. But to make it easier for people to understand, what it is things like you put your shoes in the dishwasher. You go to the grocery store and you buy a liter of milk, and you come home and there's 5 liters of milk in there because you've forgotten. There are Post-it notes everywhere as reminders for you. You get lost 2 blocks from your home. You get angry really easy, or you get really emotional, and those are not your normal kind of emotions. You forget the names of your children or your spouse.
So regular tasks become that much more challenging as well for
Certainly.
people suffering from dementia?
Certainly. Things like trying to balance your checkbook can become really difficult for somebody who's suffering from dementia.
Do people still do that? Balancing
It's a good point, but people over 65 probably do.
I understand that people can have mild cases of dementia. Shari, what does that actually look like?
Well, the thing about dementia is it's a very progressive disease. So you may show signs of mild forms of dementia depending what kind you have, but it is going to progress over time. Now, some people may have symptoms that may take years to progress, and other people it may take just a matter of months.
How does dementia really affect those who love us the most? You know, our caregivers, you know? Maybe our children, let's say if mother or father suffers from dementia or Alzheimer's, how does it really impact the rest of the family?
Oh, it impacts it in many ways. One of the biggest ways is the caregiver. The caregiver usually looks after the person at home for a very long time, and so they're maybe managing a full-time job and trying to take care of this person at home. There's a lot of guilt that comes with it. A lot of times the children don't understand, if it's their parent, they don't understand what, you know, why the parent says, oh, well, there's something wrong with them, and they're going, no, they're fine. But you can hide a lot of the symptoms for a long time.
How often do you find that some family members maybe get so frustrated to the point where they say, I'm going to leave mom and dad to the professionals, I don't want to see them anymore? Hopefully that's not the case, but people are people, right?
Right. The thing to remember is that dementia affects everybody differently. And because there's over 100 different types of dementias out there, and everybody's different, if you know one person with dementia, you know one person with dementia. So a family member, you know, seeing that person may think of their grandma who had it and think, oh, I don't want to deal with that. Well, it's different with each person. So they got to think about the person beneath the disease.
What advice would you give to someone then, Shari, who has a family member who's been recently diagnosed with dementia?
They need to deal with the person with understanding and empathy.
Compassion.
Compassion. Kindness is a word that I would use a lot. They need to learn all they can about the disease and the specific kind of dementia that they have, because it's going to be different for every person. And the dementia they have has different symptoms and different things. Frontal temporal affects communication more. Alzheimer's, as we know, affects your short-term memory.
How about programs available to help those deal with dementia?
Well, the Alzheimer's Society has a lot of programs that are in place to help people. We've got caregiver support, we've got one-on-one telephone support, we have a lot of resources in our office, and we have client service people who are there to answer questions and to help people go through the sometimes very difficult paths that take place when you're trying to find supports.
I've heard people tell me in the past, Shari, that you have to keep the brain's like a muscle. You have to keep it active. You have to keep working it. Are there certain maybe games that we can play utilizing our brain to be able to prevent maybe the onset of dementia?
Well, there are things you can do, and they're the things that people always tell you to do. You need to eat right, you need to exercise, and you need to get enough sleep. But there is one other thing, and yes, it is taxing and challenging your brain all through your life. Now, that means doing things more than just crossword puzzles. That means maybe reading books more. That means learning a new language, socializing, being very socially engaged. Hell, something as easy as using your mouse with your non-dominant hand to work the computer, that's taxing on your brain, and it works it.
But somebody with dementia, Shari, that really doesn't define them as a person, does it?
Oh no, not at all. The emotional part of the person is always there, even if their memory starts to fade. The person that you know is still that person emotionally, or that tie is still there. So if you go to visit them and they don't remember you, they still remember the way you make them feel. So holding a hand sometimes can make such a difference in a person with dementia's life.
How about if you have a family member, let's say a mother, maybe a grandmother or grandfather, who's suffering from dementia, maybe the onset of Alzheimer's? They don't want to admit to it, but you're seeing a lot of the symptoms, maybe the agitation, the forgetfulness, and so forth, maybe the onset of dementia. How do you broach the subject with them? How do you say to them, you know what, you may be suffering from this, and they're going to refute it and say, no, I'm not, I'm fine. You're the one that has the problem. Because you probably hear about that too, right?
Oh, it's very
So how do you
huge.
handle that situation
It's
with
a
that
tough
family
one.
member?
I'm not going to try and tell you how to do it each for like
Every case is
for
different.
every
I know,
case
right?
is different. So I always
been
recommend
successful, yeah.
I always recommend people call the Alzheimer's Society at 403-329-3766 and talk to one of our client services people about the specific situation that you have concerns about, because it's going to be different for each person. And it depends on your family life, it depends on the relationships, depends on what kind of caregiving they have or don't have. Unfortunately, I can't give you just one answer fits all, Al.
Are there some people who are a little nervous about going to a doctor, perhaps, being diagnosed with dementia?
Well, it comes down to the stigma. There's a big fear of being diagnosed because they're afraid of how they're going to be treated by others once somebody finds out they have the diagnosis. That means maybe they're not invited to social activities like book club. Maybe they don't get invited to do certain projects or tasks anymore because they think they won't be able to manage it anymore. They get sort of socially shunned, and same with the caregiver who gets socially shunned as well. I don't like the word shun, but I can't think of a better way to describe how terrible it is for the two people that are affected.
Has any research come forth and maybe new medicines to be able to reverse the onset of dementia?
Unfortunately, there's nothing that can reverse anything. They are certainly doing a lot of research at nationally and provincially at Edmonton, Calgary, and here in Lethbridge at our research department here to try and find ways to fix the disease, to maybe find a cure, but if nothing else, to at least mitigate some of the symptoms.
For people that have severe dementia, and again, they've got that support staff, they've got the support system around them, whether it's medical professionals in their own family, what advice would you give to that family for somebody who maybe their parent has gone almost way too far, like it's so far gone, the dementia?
Well, that just means they're in the final stages of the disease, most likely.
And what does that look like? What does that look like?
It's different for everybody.
Right.
It depending on the dementia, depending on the person. I'm afraid I can't tell you exactly how that's going to look.
Do people actually forget how to breathe? I mean, certain things?
Well, what
with their
happens
bodies?
is the brain, it's a brain disease, right? So what happens is the brain forgets to tell the body how to walk. It maybe forgets to tell the body how to swallow. So then it becomes difficult for a person to swallow, to walk, to do many of the things that they used to be able to do independently.
How about care homes, care facilities that are available right now to help families who have members who have severe dementia? How helpful are they?
Well, they're a really good choice for somebody who's a caregiver who can no longer look for somebody at their home, or they don't have the resources to do that. There are level 4, level 5 resource places here in town that will do that, and you just have to research them. Of course, like I said before, go to the Alzheimer's Society, give them a call. They can help you to find maybe the right ones for you.
We touched a little bit on programs before. Any research developments in improving the quality of life, or maybe to offer some preventative measures?
Nothing at this time. They're still working on details. They're working with mice, trying to find different things that are working and that aren't.
Why don't you share some of the success stories with me, Shari, about some of the people you've worked with who suffer with dementia and how they're able to still have a good quality of life?
Well, I've got a great example in mind right now. There's a gentleman named Roger Marple who lives in Medicine Hat, and he's become a spokesperson for National Canada Alzheimer's Society. Roger goes to different places and does speaking engagements. He's actually worked with the National on a 5-page memory tips list that has been worked. He actually has a very active Twitter account that he manages, and sometimes he does other things like that. He was actually here a year ago, if you were at the Brain Awareness event in March, and he was one of the people who was up on stage answering questions. So people like that are inspirational.
That's wonderful to hear. Shari Remus, Regional Lead, Community Relations with the Alzheimer's Society of Alberta and the Northwest Territories. Thanks again for joining me in studio here today.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.